Is your business not growing? I don't know. That was a little bit clickbaity, but I'm going to tell you why my business didn't grow for the last fiscal year and how I was able to really achieve explosive growth in the past 3 months, right? If you guys don't know me, my name is Anthony Mancini. I do around 60K a month. I think I know how to pass 100K very soon. And I just basically try to give out advice for all those people that are going from 0 to 10K, 10K to 50, and now 50 to 100, right? I'd love to tell you after that, but I've never been there, so I can't tell you. So let's go right into it. The two main bottlenecks of Amazon: sourcing and lead generation. And then the other one is capital. And these two are recurring things that will come back into your business over and over again. And if you don't know how to properly attack each bottleneck once they present themselves, well, that's where you start to stall. And that's where I started to stall. And really, when things started to click and I started going through one bottleneck to the other, and they bounce around, right? Because you find enough leads, then you have enough leads, you don't have enough money, then you have enough money, and then you don't have enough leads, and then it just goes back and forth, and you need to basically do that cycle multiple times over to get yourself to a point where now you're doing 50, 60, $70,000 a month, and then you're able to just scale that and compound all those profits and get you past 100K. But certainly at that beginning phase, that's where that bottleneck, you really need to bounce back and forth. And a lot of times it's lead generation. We're going to talk about that today. And then the other times it's capital, because you may have not started off with a lot of money, or even if you did start off with like 5, 10,000, then you start realizing like, okay, this is actually like, it's cool to spend 10K on inventory, but in reality, once you really start knowing how to source, you can spend that in a day or two, and then you're just stuck there without any more inventory. So that was the big thing for me. And I know you guys don't see it, but I got my numbers in front of me here. And I started my corporation last June. And I tell you that the majority of my profit in the past year, which was my first year doing this full time, there's 4 months, and the past 3 are included, and December, that 70% of my profits come from, right? A lot of it was I was like hard stuck, 20K. The amount of units sent was like around 500 units a month. It wasn't anything special. And I was, where I was really struggling was actually a unique point, like right in the middle, something not talked about enough. I just, when they say, and you hear this a lot through like a lot of people, a lot of the gurus out there on Twitter, on YouTube, and they say, go, I think it's an inch deep, a mile wide, right? And I took that to heart, and I just wanted to go as wide as possible without ever really going deep. And the problem is that's a great strategy. But once you find a winning product, you have to go deep. Like, to a certain extent, to one, for the buy box percentage, because Amazon's not going to take you serious if you're only sending in a minimal amount of inventory compared to the listing sales volume, right? If it's selling 500 times a month and you're sending in 30, you're not going to get that much buy box there compared to someone sending in like 200, right? And when that product costs $20, $30, well, you can see how capital can start really flying. But the thing is you found a winner. And if you found a winner, you need to invest that capital because it's going to pay off. And those are the ones, and that's the whole principle, right? I don't think that's talked enough, is when you're trying to go a mile wide, it's to minimize your risk. And once you find a winner, well, now you minimize your risk as much as possible, because you've been test buying. Oh, now you bought 15 and they instantly sold the minute they got to the warehouse. Well, don't go buy 30. Like, start doing a real analysis. And if you realize this listing sells 500 times a month, 1,000 times a month, you can either just blindly go deep, or you can try to do a little bit of analysis with the buy box percentage in the past, seller count, etc. But you get to yourself a number where you're ordering 100, 200, a certain percentage at least of the overall sales volume, which in this case would be 500, not buying 30, which is, and I'm not going to make fun of you because that's what I was doing, right? I was going deep on products that were winners, and they were winners. They were carrying me to that 20K mark. But the minute I started actually investing into my winners, to a significant amount, like that's when my overall sales volume just exploded, right? I went from doing 20K to I think 50 was just the next. Like I just jumped right away, and then 50, 55, 60, and now we're just constantly growing. And I've actually started buying really heavily recently, and that's why I really think I'm gonna blast past 100K. But we're not talking about that. We're really again going through those bottlenecks of like that was a little bit of my story in the past fiscal year. Was my problem was I was going wide, and never investing into my main players. And then like now I feel like I'm very comfortable at gauging what's going to be a winner before I even get into that listing. Now I'm not going insanely deep, but like it will happen that I'm buying a few $1,000s worth of inventory on its initial purchase. But you only get to that point where your lead generation skill competency is adequate enough to the risk, right? Like you're essentially risking that $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000 or more if you're going deep into a product right away before testing it. And hopefully it pays off. If you are good, it pays off. And that's where the whole game is, right? Is making sure that those bets more so than not pay off, and you're actually able to flip that inventory. And at the worst case, you sell at either break even or in a minimal loss. Who cares, right? You bought 100, you lose $1 per product, you lose $100. If you hit another 9 products and you made $3 per 100 unit per unit for times 100, well, you're just paying off that loss bet really, really easily. So hopefully that made sense. Now I want to break it back down to how to attack those bottlenecks. Again, well, I like this style that I've been running with breaking down those 3 things, right? 0 to 10K, 10 to 50K, and then 50K plus. So let's try to apply it to this, right? So from 0 to 10K, well, it all depends on how much money you start off with, right? I've often said 0 to 10K is like a tutorial mode. You're learning. Some will fly past it. Some it might take more time than others. And the thing about it is, if you started with $10,000 invested to buy inventory, well, of course, you're going to get out of that tutorial mode quicker because you have access to more capital. And just simply buying more because you have access to more capital will allow you to sell more sales, and then you're just going to blast past 10,000. So I hope that made sense, right? So again, if you have more money to spend, well, obviously you're going to buy more inventory, and that inventory will turn into more sales, and you should blast past 10,000. Of course, you do need to learn how to find that inventory, and that is part of the tutorial mode. And that's why having more money invested doesn't necessarily equate to gaining more sales more quickly, right? Because it's cool to have capital, but the whole trend with this Amazon, certainly if you live in the United States, you have access to cooler credit cards, but it's credit cards, right? And having the opportunity to, if you spend correctly on your credit cards, up to 55 days of interest free, right? And if you're purchasing right, which at the beginning isn't necessarily always the case, but you're able to purchase it, sell it, and then you're getting close to that 2 weeks where Amazon's going to pay you it out. So you can essentially just borrow money, buy inventory, sell it, pay back that money, and then just keep the profit. That's the ultimate ideal scenario in the future. But at the beginning, you're learning how to do all that. So the bottlenecks is mainly finding inventory, because the bottleneck of capital is the proof of, like, you're going to get to a proof of concept. You shouldn't only have $5,000 worth of inventory and expect to pass 10,000, right? You need more capital. Now, how to do that? Either you're going to risk with credit cards, or you're going to apply more capital, either based off of your salary and you're putting some every single week, or you have money saved up and you just wanted to get that proof of concept with that $5,000 invested, and now you see you're actually selling things and this actually works and you just need more money. That's the route I took, right? I started with 10,000, I added 5,000, I added another 5,000, and then I think I added another maybe couple other thousand. So I think I went 26K in the business of my money invested around that. But I didn't start with that right away. And that's what you could do too, because you need that capital. And I guess that could be considered a bottleneck, but you're going to have to figure out whether it's, again, I think credit cards are a good option for newer sellers, as long as you're comfortable with the risk and you're not an ignorant idiot. Honestly, that's what it is. Because like, don't overspend, don't over leverage anything that you can't pay back. Like I said, at the worst case, you try to sell at break even or a small loss. You can usually get back a lot of money relatively quickly if you're doing this, right? So I think I went a little bit more complex than I wanted for that 0 to 10K, and I bled into the 10 to 50K. But now the 10 to 50K is where things start getting really interesting when it comes to the bottlenecks, because you really do need to go back and forth, because your sourcing might not be entirely there to get to that 100K. But sourcing is one of those things where you have to put in the time, right? So that bottleneck there is more of a skill issue, because at the end of the day, yeah, there's Keepa Product Finder, there's reverse storefront stocking via Keepa Product Finder, via Seller Amp, right? Those are two of the most popular ways to source for all seller types. And then there's manually sourcing websites via coupons or whatever there is, right? So that's a little bit more of an advanced way, a little bit more of a way to limit competition. Whereas the other two, well, you have more competition, more people are doing those things, but everybody's doing it the same way. We might all have a little bit of a different technique. We're all potentially ungated in different things based off of account history, account sales history, account health history, all kinds of things to consider that we don't know, right? But all sellers are still doing the same things. We're going on to a listing or a storefront, and we're analyzing the Keepa data, and we're trying to figure out, can we buy it for a profitable price? There's no secret sauce. Like, you guys can try to get as many as you want from Twitter and those free giveaways that people do to gather followers. I did it. I tried to put as much value as I can in there, but at the end of the day, it's all out there for free on YouTube, and it's nothing special. It's just about doing it over and over and over again, and automatically knowing when things are good or not, right? So that's that bottleneck there, in my opinion, 10 to 50K. It's just learning how to source consistently and putting the time into it so you can actually buy a lot of volume. And then once you buy, right, because then there's sourcing, but then there's the post sourcing, right? Now you bought the product and you sent it into the Amazon. How are you analyzing that data, right? If you're not analyzing data at that point, like, I put that all into that same bottleneck of inventory management, like lead generation, but then also, like, once you have those leads, like, are you reinvesting into those, right? And I hinted about that a little bit at the beginning of the video when I was saying, for me, that was my problem, right? I was buying a lot of leads and I had no problem finding leads. I had a VA with me from the beginnings. If you watch my other videos, you know that. But like, we were generating leads. We were just buying not enough when we knew they were winners, right? So we were consistently buying maximum, like really maximum 50 of a unit. But in reality, we're most likely looking at a test order of between 5 to maybe 15 units, and then going in deep, like doubling that, right? Going 30, 40, 50 if I felt confident. A big thing here also for you guys at 10 to 50K is the capital, because now we really need to start purchasing enough inventory to turn over. And well, if you want to post $60,000 in sales, you most probably need to have $30,000 worth of cost of goods sold, right? The key word is sold. So you don't want to have the cost of goods sold in transition to your house, or in transition to the FBA fulfillment center or a prep center, or wherever these units are getting shipped. You need 30,000 roughly thousand worth of units sold in that month, ready to be sold and sold. And then you most probably have other costs of goods that are not sold yet in your inventory pool. So I like to always add a little bit more. I like to say you need to probably have like $45,000 worth of inventory bought and already into your Amazon inventory pool, active to sell, for you to sell probably around that $60,000 per month. So how do we get access to that capital? Well, I don't want to get too much into it because it depends where you're from. I'm from Canada. I can't talk too much about the United States. I know in the United States, you guys have a plethora of options. You guys have the Plum Card from American Express that can give you a crap ton of interest-free days. But I'm not talking about you guys. Sorry. I'm going to talk about for Canada for just a few minutes. You have a couple of different options. You have the American Express Gold and Platinum card that I love just because they're charge cards. One, they're not going to affect your credit score because, yes, if you have a corporation, you can use personal credit cards. You just have to talk to your accountant about that if they're only used for business. But anyways, it won't affect your credit score. You can often, if you are consistently paying off every single statement, I can spend up to like $50,000 on each card. And then I'm adding other credit cards that I have decent limits on, like 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 into the mix. So I have around 5 credit cards that I use ChatGPT to make a calendar for statement dates. So it roughly looks like every single week we're using another credit card just to spread out the statement dates and have the longest time period before we can pay off the statement. And it just allows us to cash flow a little bit better. But this is a way to unlock more capital, right? Get more credit cards, reduce risk by spreading your inventory debt through the credit cards, and try to maximize the statement dates that always have like 55 days when you're actually purchasing the inventory, right? So that from 10 to 50K, like that whole, they're both so important. This is where your growth spurt happens. That's what I like to say. So 0 to 10K is really that tutorial mode. And then 10 to 50K is where your growth spurt's happening. It's puberty for us Amazon sellers, right? We're growing. We're understanding. Some of us, it might be crazy fast. Some of us, it might be a really long time before we have a growth spurt. But before we become mature Amazon sellers, where we're getting ready to the point where we are constantly buying inventory by the tens of thousands of dollars, well, we need to get through this growth spurt and learning how to now find a lot of inventory. And then not only that, once you're finding inventory, you know what to do with your data, and you're able to go deep with your data, which is going to allow you to explode. And then once you go deep, well, now you need to start figuring out, how am I going to have enough capital to go deep on every single winner I find? Because you will find winners. And you're going to get to the point where once you start testing more and more, not the actual test order, but the replan. So now you're replanning going deep, and you maybe bought a test order of 20 units, sold all in a few days. Now you want to buy 50 to 100 units. Well, you do that more and more. Now you start getting confident in that. And this is where we start getting into that 50 to 100K part, where now we're buying right off the bat. We're confident we can start selling some of these, and we know how to get that initial capital. So we're running with debt, unless you have a lot or there's 2 ways, right? Either you're running very, very profitably in that like 40 to 50K mark for a few consistent basis, where you're compounding all that net profit back into your business, where you get to the point where you have a very, very large cash pool, and now you're using that to collateral more debt, etc. Or, well, you're just getting more and more credit cards, a la Amazon Twitter, and you're buying more inventory with more credit cards, and you get a line of credit just in case, and you just make sure that you're not over leveraged to the point where it's going to wipe out your Amazon business. But seriously, if you're getting credit cards, you really need to know your numbers and know how much you're cash flowing each month, because if you have a line of credit, you might be able to use that to patch cash flow. You really need to make sure that it's there to really only short-term patches, right? You don't want to get to a point where you're over leveraged and, like I said, wipe your business, right? So really know your numbers before you start taking on debt. I wanted to make sure I say that in this video. I know it's a little late, but it's very, very, very important that you mitigate risk so you don't over leverage yourself and wipe out your whole Amazon store, right? So again, 2 ways that you can really scale. Like, either you have the cash or you're taking on the debt. But that 50 to 10K, the 50 to 100K, well, that bottleneck now really becomes debt, because at this point, I think you really know how to source to the point where it's not necessarily a problem anymore. Maybe now it's teaching VAs how to source, so you can, because you only have so many hours in the day. I think that becomes a little bit more of the problem. But that's for lead generation. But when it comes to capital, Like I said, American Express, great for charge cards. They'll allow you to take on a lot of debt, and then you just add on credit cards, and then maybe you get yourself business loans, right? If you have an actual corporation, you can go and get small business loans, etc. Because at the end of the day, you need the capital if you want to grow. People who tell you that, hey, you'll grow and you'll do $1 million in sales. Well, if you're running with 10K capital and they're still trying to tell you that, they're lying to you. You can make money with this business. You can make a lot of money with this business. But guess what? You also need money for this business, whether that is borrowed money or that is personal money. One thing is for sure, you need money, right? So don't let anybody lie to you. I'm going to finish this rant here, 21 minutes in, probably ADHD style. I bounced off the walls, but hope you guys enjoyed that. I try to get one video out per week. I was a day late, so I'll catch you in the next one. I don't know what I'll talk about. If you have an idea, leave it in the comment. If not, I'll surely generate one throughout the week. All right, ciao.